the Abbey, we study the Lam Rim, which is a series of teachings that leads us on a gradual path to full awakening. And in the Lam Rim, there are these steps on the path. And there's three main steps. And I've thought for a long time that these are quite high steps. We have the initial level practitioner, the middling level practitioner, and the advanced level. And the criteria to be an initial level practitioner, in my view, is extraordinarily high. So to be an actual initial level practitioner, you are an authentic Dharma practitioner, meaning that you really see that future lives are more important than the present life. I don't have that. That is a high bar. That your whole perspective on life does a 180. So instead of having this uncontrived interest in only this life and not so much interest in future lives, that reverses. And you have this uncontrived interest in, I want to create the causes for a good rebirth. And what happens in this life is sort of incidental. Yeah, so that's not my experience. The middle level practitioner is someone who sees that all of cyclic existence, all of samsara, having this body and mind under the control of afflictions and karma, is like a house on fire, or like being in prison. I also don't have this. So often I go through my day and I'm enjoying things. Like samsaric pleasures, the sensory delights, I find very interesting and stimulating. And the advanced level practitioner actually has uncontrived, spontaneous bodhicitta. So they have this wish to become fully awakened for the benefit of all sentient beings. And so with that, they have impartial love and compassion. And whenever they see a sentient being, they say, I want to become a Buddha for your sake. I can tell you, I definitely don't have that. And so I was thinking, well, how do I know I'm progressing on this path if I haven't even taken the first step? If you think of these steps as there's three of them. And so one of the ways I've been answering this question and assessing for myself my own progress is I've been asking myself on a daily basis, how have I changed since before I met the Dharma to now? And I think about something that happened that day where I reacted in a more positive, more beneficial way. And I really recognize that and appreciate and rejoice in that. And this has been extremely helpful. So this morning, for example, I heard something that someone said, and I was a little bit less reactive. I had a little bit less self-blame, and I didn't take it so personally. So to me, that's success. I can feel really good about that. And that shows me that I'm moving in a good direction, even if I haven't reached the first step, if there's only 3 steps. And so I was thinking about how I can assess my progress. And one of the ways is to look at how the afflictions manifest in my experience. And so thinking about how before I met the Dharma, and to some degree now, there was this total identification with the afflictions. I am the afflictions, I act on them spontaneously, I have no regret about my actions, I even rejoice in my non-virtue because I don't recognize it as non-virtue. And then I met the Dharma, I started learning that there are such a thing as afflictions, and there is such a thing as non-virtue. And then I started recognizing, oh, this is an affliction. Oh, this is non-virtue. And I started to turn the tide and to turn my perspective on how I relate to these mental states. And so I thought of 7 factors, 7 because it's an auspicious number, um, of ways to see how I'm relating to these afflictions. And so I thought to show that, a chart is helpful for me. And I know it's helpful for at least one other person. So I thought to make a chart, and it would help me with this talk. So the first factor I thought of was identification. So how much am I identifying with my afflictions? So like I said, at the beginning, before I met the Dharma, it was just who I am. It's just who I am. Then there's this recognition that, oh, well, this is a very strong habit, but I don't have to identify with it fully. And then later, oh, this is an issue in my life, but it's occasional. It doesn't happen all the time. And then to think that it's an affliction that can be abandoned and have very strong confidence. This is not me. This is not who I am, but rather this is just a caused phenomena that comes about when various conditions come about. And so then I thought about the frequency. So how often do I get afflicted? So for some afflictions, all the time. Maybe some people feel that they are always angry, but you might check that. Then maybe, you get angry. Like for me, I have a lot of jealousy. Jealousy arises frequently, probably daily. Definitely weekly. So then maybe there's an occasional affliction, or maybe you experience that affliction rarely. And so this doesn't always mean that you've actually counteracted it. Maybe you have a very low disposition for that affliction. Maybe you've really worked on the antidotes in previous lives, or more likely, maybe, that the conditions for the arising of that affliction aren't in your life. Maybe you think you're the best, so you don't have jealousy so often. Then the duration of the affliction. So for some, and I've definitely been in this category, holding on to a grudge or holding on to resentment for years. I mean, I have a family member who, I think has held on to a grudge for years. And this has been really, really painful. And so is that the duration of this particular affliction that you want to investigate? Or maybe you see that it, comes up for a week, like you're kind of angry for a week, and then you can put it down, maybe a day, maybe hours, minutes. And eventually, maybe a long time on the path, maybe it's a moment. Maybe it's just a brief moment. And then I was thinking about the strength. How much does this affliction motivate my actions? And what is my ability to kind of restrain that? So like I said, with certain afflictions, especially before I met the Dharma, but still now, I can just act them out. If they arise very strongly, there's not much awareness, and it's so strong that I speak or act out that affliction. There's other afflictions at other points of time where I really doubt its value in the situation. I have this hesitation, like this is probably not what I should be saying or doing, but I do it anyway. Then there's afflictions where I am actively refraining from acting them out with the support of precepts. So all of us, both the lay precepts and monastic precepts, there's certain actions that we've committed to not do for the rest of our life. So that's really pushing back on the afflictions because we need to counteract them in order to not break our precepts. And then I can only imagine what this is like, but where you naturally refrain from acting non-virtuously. And that would come through wisdom. Like, I'm sure the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, they naturally act like that, right? Which is why they don't have to like take precepts, because they wouldn't break them anyway. Or if they break it, it would be for the benefit of beings. It would be for the benefit of others, and they would have a very clear motivation. I want to do this out of compassion. So then the ability to counteract the afflictions. So before I met the Dharma, I didn't even know about antidotes. That wasn't even on my radar at all. This mental state came up and I would run with it. Then I started to gain some knowledge of the antidotes, but my implementation was rare, sometimes non-existent. But then slowly I've started to implement more of the antidotes. And slowly, certain ones I practice on a more consistent, regular basis because I know the affliction is very strong, so I need to continually counteract it. And then there's the awareness of the affliction in the mind. So I think at the beginning of Dharma practice, there's absolutely no awareness. And I think there's this total certainty that it's actually not the state of my mind that's the problem, it's the other person, right? Definitely not me, totally the other person. Then there's an awareness after the fact, after we've said harsh words, after we've lied, after we've done something non-virtuous, then there's awareness. So this is where purification comes in. Then we're aware, we go through the situation, oh, I really was angry. I was really jealous. Then there's the awareness during the affliction and during the action. So as Venerable said recently, we can know that this is not something skillful to say, and yet we say it anyway, and yet we know that we're saying it, and we cannot restrain ourselves. We cannot close our mouth. And then there's awareness prior to the affliction arising. Maybe it's just very, very subtle, or as Venerable Jigme often recommends, to really notice what's arising in the body and to see that often something's happening in the body before an affliction, before a reaction of some kind. And then I think lastly, the factor that I've been looking at mostly, which has been the most helpful, is the internal reaction to the affliction. And so at first, I think before Dharma practice, there's rejoicing in it because you think it's great. You think actually it's going to solve your problem by getting angry or running after the thing you want. Then I think there's a period, at least in my experience, where there's a lot of shame and guilt because we recognize it's harmful, but we don't yet know how to put it down. Then there's dislike. I wish I didn't have this affliction come up. It's really harmful. I want to put it down. And then I think finally there's acceptance. There's this total lack of self-blame. There's just an awareness, like, yeah, I'm an ordinary being. I have afflictions. So I thought to share this. Maybe it's helpful as we're thinking about how we're changing. Because in my experience doing this daily for some time now, every day I can think of ways I've changed, and that is so encouraging. I've had a lot of self-criticism and self-doubt and discouragement, and that is changing, I will say. And this conviction in the path is increasing. And also, I think it's a really helpful way to be content to create the causes, as Venerable Chodron's often recommending. So I offer this. If it's helpful, please use it. And I will definitely continue because I just see that I'm happier when I can rejoice in what I'm doing. And even if the change is small, to still recognize it and rejoice in it.